Hey Hunters, HaloZoo here with another D&D 5.5 video. This time focused on the Psionics, which is a new power source that is going to be introduced to D&D 5.5. This is homebrew based on Wizards of the Coast work in D&D 5e, and all the art that I'm going to be using for this a bit later is going to be from D&D 4e books. So, uh, basically everything that's all Wizards of the Coast property already. I don't know who drew it, any of it, but uh, hopefully that's not a big problem. Uh, so I'll just credit them, like, it's their artwork, it's not mine. So what is psionics? Well, it's a new source of mystical power similar to magic in the spells it creates, but with entirely new mechanics and gameplay, in the terms of the game, at least. The key thematic distinction is that psionics are derived from within an individual, not by manipulating mystical energies around them, like the arcane, divine, and primal magic. So basically, think of it as arcane magic connects with the weave to create magic and spells. Divine magic is from heavenly entities that and deities that grant you the power, or you have some innate connection to it that allows you to manipulate magic, while primal magic is the power of nature and all that, where you're pulling power from the wilderness and its natural spirits and all that. But they're all external. Psionics is the inborn potential of an individual, such as your emotions, your body, your mind, your thoughts. All of that is psionics. So it's an internal power source rather than external. Though it can have external effects, it is derived primarily from your own mind, and that is the root of its power. Gameplay is roughly derived from the system created for the Mystic class seen in D&D 5e's Unearthed Arcana a while back. Though, in what should surprise no one, it's not exactly the same for good reason. So, the problems and changes to 5e psionics. So, on the left here, we've got the problems of the Mystic, and then here's what I've done to fix it up. So, looking at the Mystic, the complete diversity of the psionic classes from before, it's all consolidated into one class, the Mystic. Basically making a very versatile class that can do pretty much anything in the game. So depending on what you chose, well, you can suddenly have literally anything you could ever want in a single character without having to worry about what the rest of your party's doing. Two, all of the psionic discipline's abilities are available at all times, with the caveat that you, of course, have to have the right side limit. So, of course, if you can only use one power point on an ability, then you can't use two PowerPoint abilities. But you basically have everything available to you at once. So you're even more versatile, as you have access to all the abilities of all your psionic disciplines that you're high enough level to get. And the psionic focus doesn't mean much in that Mystic, where it's like, it's a thing that exists. You get a little passive benefit from it, but that's it. And then each discipline's utility and power varies wildly. So some offer a bunch of stuff, others barely anything. So there's a lot more inconsistency, and there's a lot more room for inconsistent power, where some are just clearly better than others, and a few are like, why would you ever take this seriously? It's not worth it. Like, taking a discipline known to learn, like, 4 abilities versus one that gives, like, 7. Yeah, no, it's not a consistent system. So to solve the diversity problem, Mystic is now 3 classes. And that is just what we saw in Mystic, is 3 classes now. With the caveat that one of them is getting kind of removed in Soul Knife. If you haven't seen the champion scale video, I mentioned there that Soul Knife kind of got the short end of the stick, where the rogue subclass isn't a thing, and then also as a class, it's the one I ended up dropping because I wanted to go a different direction with it, and what it did ended up getting taken to an even greater spectrum in the Mistblade, where yeah, we have a new class that their whole shtick is summoning weapons of pure energy. They do it with magic rather than psionics, but it just ended up being there's not really room for Soul Knife around anymore, so it's kind of gone by the wayside. But there will be options to play very similar characters available. So this allows another solution, which is solving the versatility problem, as each class does a specific thing. Ardent is your support class. Battle Minds are your main combat class. And Scions are more of a mystical class. So each one has a specific niche and will have a more limited toolkit. So you don't have to worry about the rampant versatility of Mystic. It's been fixed. Also, I do plan to have other stuff that limits how many disciplines you can take outside of your own paths, preferred options, but I'm not sure how limited they'll be right now. So, number 2, Psionic Focus is now required for certain discipline powers to be used, while the rest are improved by it being used. So, Psionic Focus is now a lot more important, as you need it to use your good disciplines. I'm not entirely sure on how this will be implemented just yet, but the preliminary throwing darts at the board idea is that Psionic Focus will matter for any discipline that is the equivalent of a 2nd level spell or higher. And then, number 3, to solve the utility and such with the discipline balance, all disciplines have 10 powers now. So you have your passive and 10 psionic abilities, and you have an ability of every level. So you've got a 1 power point minimum ability, and you've got a 10. So you've got everything you could need. So this does mean you get a lot of high rank powers, but part of the beauty of it is that, yeah, you do get a lot of high rank powers, but you get to use them a lot more as well. And do note, this isn't necessarily going to be a 1-to-1 equivalent. At least at the high end, it's going to be a bit lower. So you're not going to get a wish ability. But the idea is that all disciplines are going to be on much more even ground, where, sure, some of them might inevitably be better than others, because one might have an ability that's really good, while another might have fewer high power abilities. But the idea is that you're not going to have to worry about, oh, this discipline has way fewer abilities than this other one. That's not a thing with this. So the basic notes. The full psionic classes are the Ardent, Battle Mind, and Scion, while the 4th class that uses psionics, the Telarist, is actually a half psionics class. So with the idea of having full psionic classes, I decided, you know what, for the 12th class, I want to do a half psionics class, and thus I brought the Telarist from D&D Infinite, which was designed as a full discipline defender, and bring it over as a now half psionics class. So it's a completely new idea that it kind of fills a void that, like, sure, it didn't need to be filled, but it's an idea that we have full psionic classes. Why not have a half psionic class? Ardents are geared towards support and control with empathetic talents. So you kind of use emotions in combat to support allies and hinder enemies. Battle minds are skilled at augmenting their own bodies to master combat. Psions master psionics in its purest form and skillfully control its external power, while Talaris makes psionics with raw combat talent to defend against various foes. So they're what you'd expect, pretty much. Full psionic classes can access psionic talents, which are admittedly just talent cantrips. So it'll be pretty much the same. The only difference is that they'll interact with some different things. So psionic talents are manifested, not cast. So if something only works with manifesting or only works with spellcasting, then it'll interact differently. But otherwise, they work the same. Power points are used to fuel the psionic powers of your disciplines, with abilities costing from 1 to 10 power points, with a limit determined by your level. So as you progress, you'll get greater and greater limits. Currently, 2 power point powers are currently equal to first level spells, and the power point scaling is intended to match spellcasters in their slot progression. So, as an example, let's say at second level you have 3 first level spell slots. You're going to have, whereas at second level, a Scion or other full caster would have, or full psionic would have 6 power points, as each first level spell slot is worth 2 power points. Thus, you have 6 power points. This also means that from the start of the game, you'll have access to slightly weaker powers, that you could do 6 1 power point powers, or pump out a bunch of fewer 2 power point powers. It's completely up to you with how you use your power points. And the idea for going from the 1 to 10 scaling is the idea that there is that slightly weaker point where you can spam out a bunch of weaker powers, but you're able to do a lot more of them and get a lot more impact with them if you need to, and spread out your psionics over multiple turns rather than go all in on 1 power. So that is the idea there. So to use psionics, psionic disciplines are learned by your class at various levels, with your subclass giving you extra disciplines known from a list of those tied to it. So, for example, if you're a telepathic scion, you'll get a few extra disciplines at various points that are directly tied to being a telepath. So you get stuff from the telepath list, so you'll have some access to them. Psionic focus determines what discipline is buffed and is placed into discipline as part of a short or long rest, or as a move action at the start of your turn before using any other psi ability or talent. So, the psionic focus, it's designed that you kind of, mainly you want to preset it to what you think you'll want, but you can also change it in combat if you need to with a move action. But you have to do this before doing anything else with psionics. Of course, you could technically use the dash action or the disengage action, then do this, but the moment you use another psychic ability, you can't swap your focus. So this is primarily to say you have to change it and then use abilities, so you can't, like, let's say you use an offensive ability, then you switch your focus to a defensive one to get a better defensive buff, you can't do that. And then manifesting a psi ability, because you manifest them. It's pretty much similar to casting a spell. And certain effects, like Counterspell, will be triggered on psionics, unless otherwise stated. So, for the most part, it's usually they're treated roughly the same. So, most things will treat them as if they're the same thing. While there are a few exceptions, such as you might occasionally have items that care about specifically casting a spell or casting or manifesting a psionic ability. But the main idea is they're roughly the same, and it's assumed they're the same for Counterspell and Dispel Magic, which it's better that way. You can't spend power points on more than one psi power as part of a standard move and bonus actions on your turn. So just like spells, you can't cast more than one with resources in your turn, but you can use reactions. You also can't cast a spell first level or higher with those actions. Talents and cantrips can be freely used, though, and they're interchangeable. In the spell part, it's like, no, you can't use this to bypass other restrictions. You can either use power points on a big psi ability or cast a spell first level or higher. But talents and cantrips are worse. Free use. Use them all you want. And then also, spent power points return after a long rest, just like spell slots. So they come back with long rests only. There's not going to be a Pact Mage-like Psionic class currently. That's not a plan. Theoretically, there could be a returning Wilder, where you have a more limited set of powers, but you also have them returning more often. That's a possibility, but currently I kind of like the idea of what I've got, as I don't think there would be much interest in that sort of thing. And it's not something I'm going to bother with. Like, it's crazy enough trying to do all the classes I am. I don't need another crazy class to try and balance. Sonic Disciplines. Each discipline has a focus passive, which is active as long as your psionic focus is on the discipline in question. Each discipline has 10 psi abilities, one for each rank of psi ability from 1 to 10, though only 1 and 2 PowerPoint abilities will be usable at first level, with the rest unlocked later on, just like spellcasters getting higher level spells, right down to the fact that it increases whenever you would get spells of the equivalent rank. So you get 3 PowerPoints at 3rd level, 4 at 5th, etc., etc. And of course, the Talarist will progress at half this. So while Talarist could theoretically get all 10 psi abilities from a discipline, they aren't going to get access to more than 6 PowerPoint abilities. So you're capped off with the last 4 being unavailable to you. If psi ability has focus, in quotation marks next to the manifest time, you must have your psionic focus on the discipline it's from to manifest it. Current plan is that only 1 and 2 PowerPoint abilities lack this, though it's subject to change. Like, it could be in the future, the ones that have... There's a few that have focus until you reach a certain limit. So, for example, if you, say, had a psi limit of 5, then you could use... You might have 2 PowerPoint abilities have focus, but once you get, say, 4 PowerPoint abilities, it loses focus. There's also the possibility that it's anything lower than 5th, or it's anything above 1 PowerPoint that it has focus, but currently I'm happy with this idea where the first 2 you're able to freely use in any form, but then full psionic classes eventually get a twin focused feature that enables them to have a second psionic focus to use on 2 disciplines at once. So basically, rather than focus on only one, they get to focus on 2. Talaris, of course, do not get this, but hey, it's just the way it is. So, talking about the classes themselves, we have the Ardent. It's going to be a D8 hit dice class. It has Charisma as their manifesting ability, basically just spellcasting ability. It's their Charisma based. They have Charisma and Wiz Save proficiency to kind of match the idea that most classes have a good saving throw and a bad saving throw mixed in there. So they get Charisma and Wisdom. They get light and medium armor plus shields. They also have simple and martial weapons. They're talented with emotions. Ardents use their empathic powers to aid allies and hinder foes, taking on a mantle to represent their ideals and beliefs, such as instilling hope in allies or fear in enemies. So here's some 4E Ardent art. So, as a support-focused psionic class, they're kind of intended to be good at healing others, using their empathic powers to basically help allies ignore their pain, while also having various support abilities and some control ones. So you'll notice a few telepathic powers are actually shared with Psion. So you might be able to do some psychic damage. But they also have a few tricks up their sleeve, like they get some auras that they have that kind of represent these mantles as well. So you might have an aura that acts similar to Bane or Bless, just as some random examples. I don't really have any specific disciplines done yet. I just know that I have ideas. This idea for them is that they have these aura-like abilities in a few that enable them to sort of alter the battlefield and exemplify this empathic manipulation in more subtle ways. The Battle Mind. These guys come with D10 hit dice and a con manifesting ability. They have con and charisma save proficiencies. They only get light and medium armor plus shields. They don't get heavy armor. They're tough enough as it is. Since, and they might even be harder to kill than barbarians half the time, because, yeah. Con's your main stat, so you're buffing that. Which means that they'll get even more HP on top of their starting HP and the modifiers as you level up. So they don't need a bigger hit dice. They don't need better armor. These guys are hard to kill, and that is part of their design. They get simple and martial weapons. So they're adept at augmenting their own bodies. Battle Minds can turn their skin to steel or accelerate their speeds to great amounts. They're also known to fuse weapons to their hand or even transform themselves completely. So, they also have a few force-based powers that they'll share with Psions. So if you want to do force damage, then they are capable of doing it. So, they're kind of the most martial-focused of the full psionic classes. So, think of it as like, and also, before you think, oh, this seems kind of like a half psionic class, do understand that the Battle Mind is kind of designed around the idea that they augment themselves to be better. So, when you're not manifesting powers, you're actually weaker than other martial classes. Sure, you've got a ton of hit points and some pretty decent armor and access to the good weapons from the start of the game. you are going to struggle a bit when it comes to raw output, as you're still a full psionic class, thus you sacrifice some raw martial talent for the ability to have various powers that you're able to manifest fully, and access to some of the most powerful augmentation powers in the game. Like, the only class that can actually out self-augment is the Warden, as their whole mechanic is that they transform themselves partly. But the Battle Mind is able to just sort of, turn their skin to steel, hasten themselves, and basically use their powers to make up for their lack of direct martial capability. You didn't train to hit harder or faster, and you kind of use psionics to sidestep that, basically. The Scion, featuring some Dark Sun art. The other art, I think it's actually all from Player's Handbook 3, but here we've got the Scion art. They have D6 hit dice, because of course they do. Int manifesting ability. They have int and whiz saves. No armor, only simple weapons. That might be further nerfed, by the way. I don't know if I'm going to, but they might get limited to what wizards are limited to. But Masters of the Mind. Scions are capable of utilizing the purest forms of psionics, such as telepathy, telekinesis, shaping, and more, using their mental power to read minds, lift objects, create constructs, and light things on fire. So, and that kind of alludes to the four subclasses that will be available at launch, which is the telepathy path, which is mostly focused on psychic abilities and manipulating minds. The telekinetic path, which is all about moving stuff with force, or just crushing your foes completely. The shaper, which is about creating all sorts of objects and images, using the power of your mind to create anything you can imagine. And then there's the Wu Gen, which is just the elemental scion. So pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, electrokinesis, as well as manipulating the elements, such as water, earth, and air, as well as wood and metal, because Wu Gen, have to keep that flavor in. But they're kind of the more traditional wizards in a way, but they use psionic disciplines and have a lot of different sort of wacky abilities, such as one of the ideas is that they're able to manipulate wood. So you might launch a hail of splinters or suddenly create a wall of iron and all that. So Scions are going to have the greatest variety on offer. They will have limited abilities up close compared to the other two, as, of course, they have terrible weapon and armor proficiencies, but they are going to be the psionic wizards. Last but not least is the Telarist. So they have a D10 hit die, they have a whiz manifesting ability, they have strength and whiz saves, light, medium, and heavy armor plus shields, so they get all the armor. They have simple and martial weapons, and of course this is technically a battle mind, but it fit Telarist, so yeah. Skilled with both psionic and martial capabilities, Telarist may lack the raw fit psychic potential of others, but even battle minds can't rival Telarist's ability to fight their foes with weaponry. So basically, you've traded pure psionic ability for increased martial capability, as well as increased defensive capability. So one thing that I intend to have is some abilities that kind of focus on this defensive aspect, such as being able to resist force or psychic damage, uh, and kind of have some flavor that makes them. They're kind of geared as warriors adept at fighting aberrations, and they may even get a Smite Aberrations ability. I don't currently know if I'll add it, but I would not be adverse to adding a Psionic Smite ability. Uh, and probably make it discipline agnostic. Though Talaris will probably also get a few exclusive disciplines, in addition to ones they share with Ardent and Battlemind that focus on weapon use, but that's the Talaris in a nutshell, so that is what you can expect from this new class. But regardless, I believe that is all I have. Yep. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick look into what the Psionic system is and what it offers to D&D 5.5. I may also make some modifications for use in 1D&D slash base 5e. Though it would be a bit difficult since these are kind of tied to having their subclass at first level. But oh well. And also, if you want to put some feedback and any ideas for what you would do differently with psionics and all that, I am open to some suggestions. For example, if you think it would be better to go down the route of having the focus be a scaling thing, where at higher levels you're able to use progressively better abilities outside of psionic focus. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and without further ado, I'll see y'all next time! Halo Zoo, out.